Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wolters Kluwer's Renaissance webinar series on rational use of medicine, focus on antimicrobial stewardship. Our speaker today is Dr. Sangeeta Sharma. She is the professor and head, Department of Neuropsychopharmacology, Institute of Human Behavior and Allied Sciences, Delhi, and president at Delhi Society for Promotion of Rational Use of Drugs. If during this webinar you have any questions, you may please put them up on the Q&A panel and we'll address them towards the end of the webinar. It's over to you, Dr. Sharma now.
Hello, thank you for your kind introduction. Can we share screen now? Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Today in this session, I'll be talking about rational use of medicines, particularly factors which lead to irrational use of medicines. How does it impact our management and the patient outcomes, patient safety? And throughout this, my special focus would be on antibiotics. This topic, antibiotics, have become even more relevant in this COVID pandemic. Now we know the importance of these antibiotics. When you don't have any drug to treat a patient, how you feel like, so antibiotics are such agents which we need to handle with care. So my focus would be, all the more would be on the antibiotics. You must have come across this kind of situation, how this irrational drug use continues. We prescribe a medicine for a patient comes back to us and says, this drug is giving me this is the problem. And without thinking too much about, why is this new problem? Is this a new problem or a already existing problem which has been aggravated, or anything else could be responsible, we prescribe another. Today is a webinar. I can't ask you, but can you imagine what drug would have been prescribed to this patient? If you have to find out, the most common irrationally used drug, which we all think is harmless, on the first occasion, patient was prescribed a painkiller. And after taking painkiller for some time, this patient developed pain in the stomach. And, effortlessly, without considering much, the doctor prescribed omeprazole. And then problem with omeprazole is that you remain on omeprazole for life then, and we think that this is a harmless medicine and it can be continued indefinitely. Another occasion, patient comes up with vague problems. You don't know what the cause of it, and then patient is also looking for, you'll write something to please the patient that he has come all the way to you. We write some vitamins to the patient. This is how the whole genesis goes on. And if you look at the medicine scenario in the country, I would describe this as a jungle of drugs. We have more than, I think I have written 70,000 formulations here, but we have, can you hear me? There was somebody writing that no.
No, yes, you're audible, ma'am.
Okay, so there are more than 1,000 formulations which are available in the country, but yet at the same time we have scarcity of medicines. Those who are in need of these medicines, they don't get this medicine. So I call this as an excess versus excess paradox. On one hand we have excess, which is leading to confusion amongst the prescriber. There are more than 100 brands of one medicine which are available in the country, and this leads to different prescriptions, variation in prescribing, and all confusion begins from there. So, but we all know, we are all there. The goal of healthcare is to have a universal and equal access to reasonable healthcare. And how this can be achieved, if we continue like this, irrational drug use like this goal cannot be achieved. Now, and this is not a problem which is, particular specific to India only. This is a global problem. Although they are much better systems than us, but still this problem of irrational use of medicine is seen all over the world. This is because of extravagance, using expensive new medicines when you can treat with a cheaper, effective, safer medicines. When you can treat a patient with one drug, but we write multiple medicines, 3 4 medicines to this. And particular relevance is overuse of antibiotics and injection. I've traveled across country a lot, and I see, patient is saying pains here and there, and this patient was osteoarthritis patient, was having pain. So but in the OPD, diclofenac injections were written, and then all in the name of, patients are demanding for it. Then even if you, when sometimes you may come across situations that you have a right patient needs a medicine for the treatment, but a wrong medication or a wrong dose or a wrong route is prescribed for the patient. Overuse on one hand is a problem, underuse is also equally a problem. Many a times when a hypertension is diagnosed, diabetes is diagnosed, epilepsy is diagnosed, patients remain on, hypertension, diabetes are more or less lifelong treatments. Epilepsy is a long-term treatment, 3 years. But asthma, so much of stigma is attached to it. So even the prescriber, even the doctors are many a times hesitant to write medicines for this. But we know that these things need to be treated at the earliest. So underuse is equally a problem, is also qualifies as an irrational use of drugs. Why are we worried about these medicines? We need to strike a balance. On one hand, these medicines, they save lives, they improve quality of all our achievements are because medicines, they are saving lives and quality of. But at the same time, if we don't use them properly, they can be dangerous as well. Dangerous because of adverse drug reactions, medication errors, they are expensive. Many a times poor people, they sell their household cattle at the expense of nutrition of their other children. They are buying these medicines. So this is why we need to worry about these medicines. And medication errors is something which we need to really be very careful, because it catches news item like a fire in the forest, and we get bad name for this unnecessarily. We don't know the exact magnitude, but if you just simply look at this 5.2 million medical errors annually happening in India, is quite alarming, that we need to be careful about this. Now, as a result of these problems, because of excess problems, we are developing a growing dependence on the private sector. And then we crib about that the public sector is not being able to do it. This is because public sectors are not able to fulfill the requirements. Then patients go to private sector. Then because of these problems, the expenses, they go into the below poverty lines every time. Now, coming to antibiotics. The antibiotics are the most important discovery of the century. All our achievements have been because of the discovery of antibiotics, with penicillin in 1940 by Alexander Fleming, and it was followed by a number of subsequent antimicrobial discoveries, and which changed the history of medicine. And we had a golden age of antibacterials. One after the other, we kept on having a new antibiotic in our armamentarium, until late 1960s. We had these new classes of drugs, antibiotics coming up, but till 2000, there was nothing in between. This is called innovation gap. In between, whatever we had was, some modification in the existing. Some modification in the existing structure, these things were introduced. So, but the most important thing to note here is that between this 1960 to 2000, there was no new class of antibiotics which were, so this is a big innovation gap. But at the same time, if we see the rise, I call this as a rise and fall of antibiotics. As the number of antibiotics grew, as we see from this graph, the number of deaths came down significantly. But over a period, now we are again seeing that the number of deaths are increasing. Why is this? Because one reason that industry is not interested in discovery of new antibiotics. There are several reasons behind it. We can do sometime later, but industry is not. The fact is, because we are not getting new antibiotic, industry is not. This is not a good market for them, because as soon as an antibiotic is developed, resistance develops is started reporting very soon, so they are not interested. So that is why. And antibiotics, the germs, this antibiotic story has taught us one lesson, that germs are smarter than us. They have remained one step ahead of us. We had a new antibiotic, they developed mechanism to develop resistance to that, to how to avoid that antibiotic. So they have been smarter. So that is why this number of deaths are now increasing due to, now this is happening. This resistance problem is accelerated because of the irrational use. When we use antibiotics, and that too by parenteral route, broad spectrum ones, for non-bacterial trivial infections. We all know common cold is 90% because of viruses. But if you look into your own self-practice, or your peers or your colleagues or others, juniors, you will find all the patients who are coming to the OPD, they are getting antibiotic one or the other. And inpatients, of course, they don't even get one, they get 2, 3, antibiotics together, because they are not being prescribed in accordance with the clinical guidelines. And of course, this is happening on our end, the prescriber's end, but patients are also to be blamed because of inappropriate self-medication. Patients use leftover medicines. Last time I got this illness, doctor gave me this medicine. Let me have because the symptoms are the same, let me try this time again. Or we have a habit of sharing medicines with other friends, families. So this is another factor which is a big cause of concern as far as antibiotics are concerned. Now, coming to hospitals, if you look at where are the sites where this antimicrobial resistance is flourishing, these are the intensive care units, oncology, dialysis, rehabilitation, transplantation, burn unit. Here we are losing out patients because of the infections, because they are resistant to the normally routinely used antibiotics. We don't have because we have used them, and the bacteria have become resistant to these antibiotics. Now, part of the one half of the problem is because of the human use of antibiotic. Another half of use of the problem is non-human use of antibiotics. In animals also, the same antibiotics are used which we are using in human beings. So particularly if you look at, farmers are using it, antibiotics. They're using antibiotics of last resort, cholesterol, to boost the as a growth promoter. These, milk producing animals, they are getting antibiotics because they want to treat them. Crops, even these antibiotics are sprayed on the crops. TB drugs, streptomycin, tetracycline, which is used for humans, is sprayed on the crops. So you can imagine, how, and this way the antibiotics residues, they get into the environment. Once they get into the environment, the other bacteria, other things get exposed to them, and the resistance develops to them. And as a result, this was one study done in 2015, and India had the distinction that we are the 4th largest consumer of antibiotic laced chicken. Even if you don't have, sometimes you may have come across situations that you say that I never took any antibiotic, but how come my report is coming resistant to most of these antibiotics? This is happening because of the antibiotics resistance coming from the environment. And this is getting worse all over. Although the fixes are simple, but all over world people are facing this problem. So this spread of antimicrobial resistance, we need to take care of this at this moment, before we land into a post antibiotic era where we will not be left with any antibiotic, effective antibiotic for the treatment of resistance bugs. And if I have to say one line about this, use is the key driver for the spread of AMR. If you use it, this is bound to happen. This is not a new phenomena. This was reported by then 1940 itself by the Alexander Fleming, that this antibiotic will be misused and the resistance will develop. So if we don't use it, the resistance will be slowed down. So use is the key driver. So we need to look at, how are we using these, and if we don't take care of this right now, we would enter into a post-antibiotic era, AMR pandemic. Right now we are facing a COVID pandemic. Now then we'll have to face another pandemic of AMR, where we will not have effective antibiotics to treat common infection. And one thing, I think if we remember, nature is in control. Nature tries to balance out these things. And if we don't use this, then nature will take control of this. Now, there are many other issues which are related to antibiotics. I have already talked about excess versus excess. There are other issues like, you need sophisticated technology, but for example, COVID, to test this COVID, we need sophisticated technology, but at the same time, we need point of care testing, diagnostic testing. I have seen many states in India where even simple facility for culture, urine culture and sensitivity is not available. The rational use of antibiotic cannot be practiced unless we have this. Many patients for pneumonia, bacterial pneumonia, you need antibiotics. One hand, in urban areas, you will find they'll be treated with broad spectrum with 2 or 3 antibiotics, whereas in rural area, they will not even get simple amoxicillin for their treatment. Then self-medication. Then there are other issues like, many people say brand is better, otherwise generic drugs are not good, substandard because they are of substandard quality. These are, but I don't think so these impact the use of these medicines. We hardly have any other. Besides this, antibiotic irrational use is more of a educational behavioral problem. Regulation and economical, these things issues are there, but most of it, I would say, education and behavior is something which we can change. Otherwise this problem is so common too. Besides this, we misuse these antibiotics because of the changing context of, we don't want to fall ill for even one day. We cannot even spare one day to remain indoors. Otherwise, we rationalize these things. How will I? We are seeing these issues. These have been particularly highlighted by the COVID, this thing. So, and we need to be very careful about this. The one factor which I would like to, today highlight here in this session is, patients come and demand for it. Of course, they come, they don't know. They come, they have misconceptions about this. So they come and ask for it. But we as a physician are the custodian. We know the good and bad side of what is needed, what is not needed. And most of the time I feel rather than the real pressure, it is the perceived pressure which we say, because my patients come here just to get the antibiotics, that is why I keep writing antibiotics for the patient. This is more than a real pressure. I have done a lot of studies on this, and some people are writing antibiotics because they think that litigation tomorrow, if somebody goes to the court and say medical negligence, why? So why not write it in the beginning? And most of the time, when I interviewed the healthcare workers, doctors, why are they writing antibiotics? They had the knowledge, particularly diarrhea and ARI, that 90% of both these conditions are caused by viruses. They know this. No antibiotics work on viruses, but they don't act on it. They think that these antibiotics will help them in treating the secondary bacterial infections, which is a very small segment. Only 10% to 15% of the patients who had suffered from acute respiratory infection, they develop these secondary bacterial infection. Only that. So watchful waiting is something which is required rather than prescribing antibiotic at the first instance itself. And also, corporate sector has come in, cost saving pressures are there to substitute therapy for diagnostic, reduce appointment time. We are so overloaded with the patients that who will take time to explain to the patient that antibiotics are needed, rather prescribe an antibiotic and let go of this patient. So, a lot of these factors are also, industry would be certainly interested in promoting their product. One very good example of industry promotion is, if many of you, if you have witnessed when this amoxicillin clavulanic acid was introduced. This is a combination for beta lactamase inhibitor. For that, when it was introduced, it was mainly introduced to treat hospital acquired infections. But now today, you see, as a first line, everybody is writing Augmentin. This happened because the industry felt that hospital acquired infection is a very small chunk. They cannot make return on this. So they started promoting it for community acquired infection. And now, everyone is asking, even self-medication, over the counter dispensing, if you see, everyone is getting Augmentin. So this is how one very good antibiotic was lost. We are losing because of the misuse or irrational use. The consequences are quite grave. Besides this increased morbidity and mortality, we will have no antibiotics left to treat certain infection, pneumonia. Simple curable diseases would become incurable. TB, which was sensitive, easy to treat with first line, has now become MDR, XDR. Likewise, malaria. All these things are getting worse because of this AMR, greater cost. Patients suffering from hospital acquired or multi-drug resistance infections, they need more investigation, they need more expensive toxic antimicrobials. So, and they exacerbate or prolong illness, hospitalization. So much so that the entire problem has become a major global public health issue. So now, question before us is, can this be halted? It cannot be halted. As I said, this is a natural phenomena. So therefore, our main priority should be to prevent infections. And whenever, we may not be able to prevent all infections, containment is the next best option. Now, and we need to, take this seriously, because antibiotics are precious. We need to preserve them. Unless we have these strategies to contain it, we will lose all, whatever advancement in medical practice we have made, that will be lost. And superbugs will be there, they will be ruling us all over. So that is why now this, because use of antibiotic is not only confined to human beings, they are being used in animals. They are being used in animals as well as the environment. So that is why one holistic approach has been suggested, One Health approach has been suggested, where antibiotic use in all these three sectors would be looked into. Looking at this into account, National Action Plan for antimicrobial resistance have been identified, and there are 6 priorities. Today I'll be talking to you about the optimum use of antibiotics, which is most crucial for the success of this NAP program. So antimicrobial steward, optimum use of antibiotic, when we say, we talk about antimicrobial stewardship interventions. So this is, this is a two-pronged approach, antibiotics stewardship. On one hand, we have prevention of spread of infection. You all know about infection prevention and control, and on the other hand, there is a reduction in the use of antibiotics. So we have, you all are familiar with IPC. You are also familiar with antibiotic policy. So antibiotic stewardship is a marriage between IPC and antibiotic policy. If you have IPC alone in your hospital, you will not be able to tackle AMR problem. But if you only, or you, on the other hand, if you focus only on antibiotic use and there is no IPC activities in the hospital, again, this problem cannot be sorted out. So this whole antimicrobial stewardship is to defer resistance, So in this stewardship, basic major program is surveillance. You keep watching what's happening, how are they being prescribed, antibiotic policy, and antibiotic management programs. So this consists of coordinated interventions. It improves the use of and measures the surveillance is about measuring the use of antibiotic, and then this stewardship program, they help in promoting selection of optimal antibiotic regimen. Dosing, it tells you about dosing, duration, route of administration, etc. I'll be talking about in detail about these interventions. There are 12 steps. I like this. This is a very old slide, CDC, but I like this very much for one reason, that in figure, the 4 important aspects of handling infection are treated. First and foremost is prevent infections by vaccination, by getting catheters out, by targeting the pathogens, access the expert, diagnose and treat effectively, use antimicrobials wisely, and prevent transmission from person to person and hospital acquired, break the chain, isolate the pathogen so that it does not spread to others. So, there, and one more thing, the entire antibiotic stewardship, this is about, never forget, antibiotics are not the only management. There are other things by which we can handle patients suffering from infections or preventing infections. Barrier precautions, hand hygiene, by a proper biomedical waste management, use of single-use devices. So over reliance on antibiotics should not be there. Now coming to the antibiotic stewardship, what are the goals? The main goal is to reduce drug resistance and to promote optimal use of antibiotics by all providers and optimize patient safety by having 4Ds. What are these 4Ds? These 4Ds are right drug, right dose, right duration, and de-escalation of the antibiotics at the right time. Now, coming to antibiotic stewardship, it is a teamwork. It cannot. The core elements of AMS program are leadership. You need a support of head of the organization. Leadership and commitment is required because some resources are required for executing these stewardship activities. Then interventions, education and training of people will be required. Monitoring, surveillance, reporting and feedback is very important. And everyone who is responsible for the healthcare in the hospital is accountable, and they are made responsible for the use of antibiotics. The team consists of, it's a multidisciplinary committee. It is not that only clinicians will be able to do it alone, or a pharmacologist sitting in the college will be able to do it. It is a joint team effort by everyone who are involved in the management of the patient, infectious disease specialists wherever they are, infection control team people, microbiologists, intensivists, nursing personnel. I'll come to the, what is their role. Surgical infection and surgeons are required, health, human resource person, pharmacists, administration, all these people are required. The OR people, operational management people, quality. Nowadays, all hospitals are having quality managers in the hospital, so they also need to be involved in the antibiotic stewardship activities. Now, the major component of antimicrobial stewardship is antibiotic policy, and the major aim, as I have already said, to decrease morbidity, mortality, preserve the effectiveness of these, and prevent the communicable disease spread in the. So there is, the objective is that you ensure effective treatment, ensure rational use of antimicrobials, recognize trends in AMR within institution. What's happening to the antibiotics which we are using at the institutional level, hospital level, and then once you identify, how do you identify, which patients to be identified, admitted, transferred, discharged, readmit, all these things. And we have to develop the facility for detection, prevention, and control of antimicrobial resistance. So I think this figure, this picture is self-explanatory. We are trying to catch zebra on a ride, unless we have a good effective strategies to control, we will not be able to do it. Again, antibiotic policy is written by the disciplinary people. You have clinicians, microbiologists, pharmacists, nurses, antibiotic committee, IPC committee. So there should be always these committees should be talking to each other. They are not standalone. Many hospitals I visit, I find IPC committee is there, but they are not giving any input to antibiotic committee, or antibiotic committee is not taking inputs from IPC. But these committees need to talk to each other and give their observations, because without these IPC and antibiotic policy, the stewardship program cannot take off in a hospital. Now, what is you would say, what is the role of nurses? Nurses, they can ensure, the more, if you want to promote prudent use of antibiotics, cultures, as I said, the pathogen should be identified. This will happen only when cultures are taken before starting antibiotics. Many a times we see, we in a hurry to save the patient, we start antibiotics and we forget to take samples. So unless we identify the pathogen, unless we see the sensitivity profile, how can we then target effective treatment for the patient? So nurses can always assure that the samples are drawn before starting antimicrobials. They can question if dose is not proper. They can also ask the prescriber that this patient is now the patient was very sick, was not able to take orally, was put on parenteral antibiotics, is now able to tolerate oral intake. Can we switch from parenteral antimicrobials to oral antimicrobials? Or timely administration of antimicrobials. Very often we see antibiotics are prescribed 8 hourly, 12 hourly, 24 hourly. But when you look at the administration roster, it is PDS, BD once a day. So with antibiotic, you have to administer this timely, and often we see that omission errors are there. A dose is missed because patient had gone for an X-ray, was not there on the bed when the distribution was going on. So very often this is missed. So nurses can look into that, and then administer antimicrobials at the right rate, monitor these patients, whether there is a response, fever is coming down, the other investigations which are supportive, which will tell you whether the patient is improving or not, whether So all these things can be monitored, and they can also monitor allergies and side effects daily and because they are more in proximity with the patient, so they are the better people. Many times when I say, many programs I go, they say, "Well, why are you talking about nurses? What role they have? They don't prescribe antibiotic." But if you look at all these things, these things can be managed. They can, assist you, by doing these things, and because they are much closer to the patient than anyone else in the ward. Similarly, pharmacists, they say they don't have any prescription. They just have to dispense this. But very important requirement is to complete the course of antibiotics. So they are in the position to counsel the patient, family members, their caregivers, and many times, these antibiotics, they cause, problems, side effects, such as diarrhea is so common with amoxicillin. So patient stops taking it. So they are in the position, what to do if such things happen. So involve the pharmacists in these activities. It will, be helpful in this. Now, coming to the specifics of antibiotic committee, the major thing, they can advise on antibiotic use and audit prescribing. They can do formulary restrictions and I'll be talking about these things, pre-authorization, and they can help you. They make these choices for you. How which class of antibiotic would be more effective, and whether which is the broad spectrum, which can be replaced by a narrower spectrum, which one is the least expensive and most effective antibiotic which can be used. So they also, do this exercise for you, and people in the wards have to just follow these. Now there are 9 common areas for improving antibiotic prescribing. Overprescribing, I have discussed. Wrong choice. Viral infections are there, but we are giving antibiotic. Or we needed some other class of antibiotic, but we choose a wrong one. Overly broad spectrum, wrong route, wrong dose, wrong duration, irrational combinations. These are very common. I see, very common are ciprofloxacin, tinidazole combination, levofloxacin with some combination, or arnidazole, tinidazole combination. Rarely it has been seen that the patient will suffer from, amoebiasis as well as bacterial dysentery. Both these drugs, tinidazole and antibiotic, have a specific indication. Ciprofloxacin is needed in bacterial dysentery, and tinidazole is for the amoebiasis. But very rarely it will happen that the patient will have both dysentery and the amoebiasis. But if you look at the prescribing pattern, 90% of the patient will get this combination. Because, and you find there is a misconception about the effectiveness of this medicine, because diarrhea, viral diarrhea, as you know, is a self-limiting illness. It will get better on its own, even without you give any medicine. All you need to do is just to give overweight hydration fluids. That's all. And with one tablet, patient gets satisfied. Oh, my diarrhea got better. And next time he will take it on his own. Omission, delayed, wrong dose interval, we have already. Now coming to the specific strategies, there are 2 types of strategies, core and supplemental. Core are the formulary restrictions, and then there are supplemental. I'll be talking about these in detail. Formulary restrictions, here you place restrictions on prescribing on antibiotics, either by indication or by prescriber, that only a senior consultant can prescribe this, or you can do it by services, that in outpatient department only these antibiotics will be used, in inpatient department these following antibiotics will be used, emergency department will use these antibiotics, only ICU can use piperacillin, imipenem, like these medicines. And if you have or you restrict by disease, that if there is you can use a combination, but this is a very effective antimicrobial stewardship intervention. Most people use these services. They decide beforehand which all drugs will be available in OPD, IPD, or ICUs, and then you follow this. Now, then this formulary restriction can be combined with pre-authorization. Pre-authorization, we have all practiced this. When you write some antimicrobial, you need a authorization by your senior. For example, you need pre-approval of orders before dispensing. One very good use of this pre-authorization is in ICU. In ICU, we see patients, severe patients such as septicemia. You don't know the cause of the infection, so you start treatment with a broad spectrum antibiotics. But if for 48 hours you can give this, because it is life saving. You need to start this. You can't wait for the approval for coming in for this patient. So you start this antibiotic. You can give it up to 48 hours. But if you want to continue this beyond 48 hours, you would need authorization for this. Similarly, for example, you may ceftriaxone, ciprofloxacin, you can give. No problem. You don't have to take pre-authorization from anyone. But if you want to start piperacillin, or you want to start colistin, the drug of last resort, you would need a pre-authorization. So these things are dealt in. You arrive at a consensus amongst your all the prescribers there. It is not that somebody is just forcing these things. So these things are arrived at by consensus. Okay. Then timeout is another very effective strategy. As I said, patient was sick, you started with a broad spectrum antibiotic, you continue it after, for 48 hours. But if you want to continue these medicines, this empirical antibiotics, then your automatic stop orders are there. Corporates are doing it very well. Pharmacy will not dispense them these antibiotics anymore unless they fill up a form where they justify why do you need to continue these broad spectrum empirical antibiotics beyond 48 hours. Because one of the strategy of antimicrobial stewardship is de-escalation. De-escalation is that you start with a broader spectrum and then you switch to a narrow spectrum antibiotic. Once the patient is controlled, stable, is improving, then you can switch them to a narrow spectrum. So, this is a very effective strategy. This, people have found quite a lot of success with this. Then, of course, improving availability and access. This goes without saying. Many times I have seen in many hospitals, they don't have simple antibiotics, but they have all fancy antibiotics. You will find linezolid there, but you will not find amoxicillin. So, one has to ensure, if you want a rational use of antibiotics, we need to ensure their availability as well. Another strategy is antimicrobial cycling. Not many reports, but those who are using, they are saying that this is an effective strategy. This means that you schedule rotation. For example, in OPD or ICU, you have a particular set of antibiotics available. For 1 year, they will be available. Second year, you will change the antibiotic. As you know, as I said earlier, use is the key driver. As you keep on using these medicines, resistances ought to develop to these. But if you change the antibiotic later, then the resistance will return or the sensitivity will return. We have seen these, we are witnessing these examples. Chloramphenicol was used for typhoid. Very good drug, apart from its side effect, but otherwise very effective drug, used for many years. Resistance developed, now abandoned by the clinicians because of the resistance. Other drugs were used. Now you see the sensitivity has returned to chloramphenicol. So this is what it is. So if you stop using it, sensitivity returns. Another good example is cotrimoxazole, Ceptron. Earlier, we were using it for common infections. Resistance developed. We stopped using it. Now, if patient is not responding, if you try this co-trimoxazole, patient will respond. So this is what is about antimicrobial cycling. We can do this. Another, stewardship act. This is a stewardship activity, but at a national level. Schedule H1 has been enacted. This was mainly enacted to restrict the over-the-counter availability of, the situation in our country. Anything and everything is available over the counter, including all third generation, fourth generation, broad spectrum, narrow spectrum, whatever you may call. Everything is available over the counter. So we could not stop this irrational use. We could not stop this over the counter. So the government thought, okay, let's have a smaller list where the pharmacist will abide, and we will at least preserve resistance to these three groups of antibiotics: third generation and newer antibiotics, anti-TB drugs, and habit-forming drugs have been included. Earlier, 46 drugs were there. Now, during COVID pandemic, 47th drug, this hydroxychloroquine, has been added to this. So that means this there is a red line. You need to this. There is a red box warning that this has to be dispensed only on prescription, and all pharmacies where these drugs are being used, they have to keep a separate register for the sale of these schedule, including public hospitals. Many people think that this is for private pharmacies, but this is for public. But all you need is, you need to just maintain a register so that you know how much of these drugs have been used. Now, another stewardship, very effective stewardship activity is that whatever drug hospital formulary you have, you divide them into three categories. Excess, aware, this is called aware. A stands for excess, which should be made available at all times as treatment for a wide range of common infections. For example, I talked to you about OPD, excess. There are 48 medicines in that. From the WHO list, you can select that these drugs can be made available at OPD. Then second is watch. 110 drugs are there. These are the antibiotics which are recommended for the treatment of a small number of infections. These are the prioritized targets of antimicrobial stewardship and monitor. We need to monitor. Don't waste much of time on excess drugs. Only thing is that you have to ensure that these drugs are available. Watch drugs, we have to monitor how much is used, where it is being used, how is it being used. And last one is reserve. There are 22 drugs in this category, and drugs like colistin and I'll be showing you the list. Last resort options are this. They are also the key targets for AMS. So remember, focus your attention on this watch and reserve drugs as targets for. All of these are also relevant, but these are, if you target these, you are likely to see much better visible results with these. Okay, these are the list of medicines. You can go through this. Target is, WHO says, out of all the total consumption of antibiotics in your hospital, 60% of the consumption should belong to this excess group. If you do this, if you look at your consumption in your hospital, there are methods to do that. DDD, many of you may be aware of it. If you do that, and if 60% of the drug utilization is from excess category, then perhaps you are doing well. So, but if there are more of watch group antibiotics in your drug utilization, it's a cause for worry. So these are the antibiotics which are of highest priority. These are clinically important antibiotic lists where the resistance potential is high. So we need to preserve these antibiotics. And there are reserve group antibiotics. These are usually called last resort. They are reserved for multi-drug resistant organisms. So these medicines need to be protected and prioritized as key targets for national and international stewardship. Even hospital program, these drugs should not be used at the secondary care level. This should be used at a tertiary care level only. Now, coming to the second first one was availability, accessibility. Now the second most important strategy is that you follow treatment guidelines. These are enablers. Or you make antibiotic policy general principles for prescribing antibiotic, and then for specific treatment of a condition, you have a treatment guidelines. Many of you might be aware of this. We have this book, Standard Treatment Guidelines, where we give stepwise treatment for management of a infectious disease, empirical treatment, where then the definitive treatment is required, what all drug choices are being made. So you may also consult this national treatment guidelines. For this has been specifically made for antimicrobial use in infectious. This one is this includes both infectious and non-infectious diseases. Here, this is only specifically for infectious diseases. But this was quite some year back now, 2016. This needs to be updated. It's 4 years now, but we keep on updating this every 2 years. So now, if you want to control the antibiotic use, remember this mnemonic. Mind me. Microbiology guides, indication should be evidence-based, use the narrowest spectrum available required, dosage should be appropriate, minimize the duration of therapy. Lesser the duration, better it is, Many a times, it happens. So, we are so busy, overworked, busy. We start antibiotic, and after nursing, 14 days have passed, 15 days have passed, patient has been with you in the ward. A nurse will come and tell you, should I continue with the antibiotic? The doctor will innocently ask, acha, kitne din ho gaye? How many days? 14 days ho gaye. Acha, 14 days ho gaye. Stop it. It should not be like that. So duration should be decided right in the beginning when a decision for prescribing an antibiotic is taken. You will give it for 5 days, 7 days, 10 days, whatever is the condition of the type of the patient you are having, and ensure monotherapy in most cases, and reserve these medicines. Do an audit of, how much are we using it? Where are we using it? See, as you know, there are 3 types of treatment with antibiotic: empirical treatment, therapeutic treatment, prophylactic treatment. Many a times we are using extending prophylactic treatment thinking that this is therapeutic, which is not necessary. So we need, unless we collect this data, we would not come to know. So we need to analyze this data, then give feedback to our prescribers. See, this is what we found, where is our antibiotic prescribing going on, and then instigate as necessary, and if new interventions are needed, that need to be done. So when you do this audit, you need to look at the quantity of prescribing and also the quality of prescribing. Quantity of prescribing is easier to understand. See, you check prescription data of 100 patients, and then you see how many of them got antibiotic. In an OPD, if you get 80% antibiotics or 90% antibiotic use, of course, then you know that there is something wrong with the prescribing. Because it's not that all of these patients are coming with infectious diseases. There would be other patients with non-communicable diseases as well. But then when you look at the quality of prescribing, then when you are doing this audit in indoor patients, then you are looking at what was the rationale, why was this prescribed, was culture and sensitivity done, whether de-escalation was done or not. So all these things, audit can be looked into it. So particularly, when most crucial step is, a decision, when you take decision that you are going to treat this patient with antibiotic. So first moment is that whether the patient really does require it. Have you ordered appropriate cultures before starting antibiotic? And what antibiotic therapy should you be initiating? A day more has passed. Can you stop it? Can you switch to narrow therapy? Can you switch to oral? And what duration? So remember, these are the most crucial 4 moments for antibiotic decision making. I think COVID-19, another lesson antibiotic overuse puts stewardship efforts at risk. If you go back and look, I think it is at its the peak. Antibiotic use would be at the peak. You would say, we are doing it in the interest of the patient, to say we don't know whether they are suffering from bacterial co-infection as well. But co-infection is a possibility, and most severe COVID patients, they may have severe bacterial hospital infections. But if you look at, COVID itself is a very peculiar disease. We don't have specific therapy, and if we are using already these broad spectrum antimicrobials, hydroxychloroquine, chloroquine, lopinavir, ritonavir, remdesivir, these are being used. We don't know what would be the impact of these in times to come. So that is why WHO has come out with the guidelines for use of antimicrobials, particularly if you are suspecting or there is a confirmed case of COVID. So they say, the major points here is, if it is a mild COVID, no antibiotic therapy or prophylaxis is required with antibiotic. If it is moderate, no antibiotics unless suspicion of a bacterial infection is there. And if at all you have to use antibacterials here, use the excess group of antibiotics. I've given you the list. Use this excess group of antibiotics. But if it is a severe COVID, use empirical antimicrobials to treat all likely pathogens, more like pneumonia. All the guidelines for treatment of pneumonia, they can be used, but these should be reserved for severe COVID-19 patients. And this depends on the clinical judgment. Patient host factor, sorry, there is a mistake here. Start as soon as possible, because first hour antibiotics should be, once you have taken a decision to start antibiotic, they should be started within 1 hour of initial assessment, and a culture should be obtained. And it shouldn't be that you started, it was a severe COVID-19 patient, you started with antimicrobials, but you should, as with AMS activity, you assess daily and de-escalate. If required, it should be de-escalated. So there are 5 major things, the bottom line is, start smart, then focus. You start with broad spectrum, IV, oral, then you review this, then you change to narrow spectrum antibiotic, and if required, continue and review the duration of therapy. Sometimes, this has been also very effective. You reduce the stay in the hospital, you discharge patient comes to OPD for parenteral medicine, if it is once a day, or it can be done through OPD. They continue to get their parenteral antibiotics, but all these decisions should be documented. The file should be, patient's file, medication notes should be clearly describing how it is. Then surgical prophylaxis is another area where most misuse of antibiotics happen, especially when it is a clean surgery, elective, non-traumatic, primarily closed, involving a placement of a prosthesis and implant. These are considered as clean surgery. You don't need antibiotics except one single dose within 120 minutes before incision. Only single antibiotic. But in practice, if you go back and see, that you will find the patients are on 1 or 2 antibiotics for 10 days for the entire duration of therapy. So these should be, surgical prophylaxis should be reserved to single one dose with, and this should also happen prior to incision. More than antibiotic, skin preparation, glycemic control, normothermia, wound handling, these are more important than antibiotics, and if it is a clean contaminated, you can use antibiotic, but there are certain specified antibiotics which should be used for this. So I'll be, so there are certain things, stewardship approaches, which can be done from the front end, and there are certain things which can be done back at the back end. So you have a policy, antibiotic policy. This is a kind of rule book. You have a policy for treatment, antibiotic policy. You protect broad spectrum specimen collection, formulary resection, pre-authorization, and document all these. And then audit me, you can review this. What for, when did you use, what are the, and give feedback to the prescribers as well as the AMS team. Now, when you go back after this, I would urge you all to identify one area in your hospital which you think is the most low hanging fruit, for which you don't have to do much, and you think much of the misuse of or overuse of antibiotic is happening. You prioritize that and you implement. And I think easiest would be surgical prophylaxis. If it is elective LSCS, why do you think that there would be an infection if patient has been prepared properly? So you can choose depending on your hospital, where do you use work, what is the most pressing example, you use this. Then de-escalation. De-escalation is something you allow the prescribers to use whatever they think is necessary to safeguard the patient, but de-escalate. De-escalation could be in the spectrum, could be the route. Many times we think the parenteral drugs are more effective, but sometimes oral drugs are equally effective. And then maybe you can, when discharge, you can look at the discharge very carefully, and duration, you fix that. The moment it goes beyond 14 days of then what you are going to do this. There are methods of measuring antibiotic consumption rates. These are there on their own, a full lecture for this, how to do this, but all the guidelines are available. WHO gives all the detailed guidelines here. So I think I would like to end. This is how the entire this slide summarizes. You have community acquired infections, you have hospital acquired infections. So antibiogram, having an antibiogram is very important. You should all have patterns. What is the culture and sensitivity pattern going on? Then based on that, you make decisions, general principles for antibiotic prescribing. Then all the prescribers in the hospital should be apprised of this policy. Many hospitals, when we go for assessment, they say, we have a policy, but what is written in that policy? Nobody knows. Where is that policy? Nobody knows. So unless it is followed, unless it is practiced, it is not of use. And then you need to follow the standard treatment guideline. It is not that it is my whims and fancies or it is my prerogative. Who are you to tell me? I am having 30 years of experience of handling patient. I know what is good for my patient. It's not like that. It is for the, how do we use these effectively and preserve their. So all these things are going into the antimicrobial stewardship, and I would all wish you get well soon without antibiotics. I think that, because antibiotics are not the only way of management of patients. There are other things which we can use for management of patients. Thank you. Thank you. It's over. Ravi?
Thank you so much, ma'am. This has been very useful for us. I will now request our participants, if they have any questions, they can please quickly put them up on the Q&A panel, or they can raise their hands also.
Yeah.
Yeah, Neha, we have few questions. So
Yeah.
I'll put them for Dr. Sangeeta. Ma'am, first question was from Dr. Nandita Acharya. What do you say of using antimicrobials on COVID-19? Many have tried anti-malarial, antibacterial, antiviral, etc.
Yes, these are all, we didn't have anything for the treatment of COVID. There were some evidences that these might be effective. So based on that, hydroxychloroquine, but we are still, this is an unknown territory. We are still collecting data, and whatever is being allowed is on the compassionate grounds. because initially when the COVID presented, there was a high mortality was associated with it. So we are still doing it. We don't know how much is being, this remdesivir, this lopinavir, ritonavir, and this hydroxychloroquine is not it's a effective drug, but it's very toxic as well. So you can't use it, generally people started taking it. So that is why it was reserved for healthcare workers only. But we are still gathering, you have been hearing different reports. One report saying that hydroxychloroquine was effective, the other saying no, it is. So discontinue this clinical trials. So we need to really keep looking for it now.
Thank you, ma'am. Like another question is from Dr. Ganga Raju. So, what is the role of antibiotics, azithromycin, in mild COVID viral disease? It prevention from secondary infection.
See, mild, as the WHO guidelines say that no antibiotics are needed. They are self-limiting, like any other viral illnesses. Even if it was a flu, common cold, which we call, 90% would resolve on its own. These are self-limiting illnesses. No antibiotics are needed. Only 10 to 15% of patients, they get secondary bacterial infections. For that also, the symptoms, signs are very specific. There are 3 different types of bacterial secondary infections can happen. Either it can go to ear, otitis media, or it can go to sinuses, sinusitis will be there, or it could be a sore throat, this bacterial sore throat. So all these, all these 3, there are hallmark presentations. Patients will present to you with a specific finding. So that is, if it is a sore throat, you can see pus points when you examine. If it is sinusitis, you will see pus, dripping down at the back of the nose. If it is otitis media, patient will present you with a severe earache. So even in flu times, they say watchful waiting should be practiced. Watchful waiting is that you put the patient on supportive treatment and ask them to watch for these systems. I understand the anxiety of the patient as well as the anxiety of the healthcare workers, that this we didn't know how the COVID disease progress is like. So asking them to do watchful waiting. But if we use antibiotics for all these patients, we will lose their effectiveness. And even for moderate and severe COVID, we will not have any antibiotic left. So for mild one, no, unless these secondary bacterial infection signs are there.
Right, ma'am. Then there's one more question from Dr. Nandita. In doing clean intermittent catheterization, when kidney function is borderline, do we give prophylaxis?
No, see, when there are bundles, today this session was limited, and otherwise we have a full modules on each of these. So when any implant or catheterization is being done, most important thing to practice is the infection prevention control. Aseptic technique should be there. If our technique is aseptic, there is no need for any antibiotics. Antibiotics are needed only for that 2 single dose if you are doing some incision on the skin, not for catheterization or any other thing.
Right, ma'am. Then one more question is from Dr. Arshad. Does excessive use of antimicrobials affect gut bacteria, which recently have been proven essential for our survival?
Yes, definitely. If you come to, one of the major side effects of antibiotic, one is hypersensitivity. Second is this infection. They replace the normal flora. These bacteria are not only, they are very beneficial for our body. They have lots of, activity role to play in digestion, metabolism, providing us nutrient. But when we use these antibiotics indiscriminately or use the broader spectrum, they kill the normal flora as well, and then this gets replaced by the more resistant bacteria, and Clostridium difficile infection is the major concern here.
Right.
And it is very difficult to treat once it happens, and it takes months to get back normal flora.
Fine, ma'am. So I guess this last question is there. Is there any program to create awareness about antimicrobial resistance among general public?
Yes, we do keep doing these programs. Last year, we did a school campaign. We did all the students of Delhi Government Hospital, about 1,000 hospitals were there. We sensitized their senior secondary students to these antimicrobial. Major messages were passed on, and the feedback of this program was very good, very encouraging, motivated. They wanted this every year. Unfortunately, because of this COVID pandemic, this year we will not be able to do face-to-face, but we are thinking of doing some online campaign for education of, because we chose school students because they are more receptive. They understand this, and this is part of their curriculum as well, and then they can direct their family members, check these, like cracker movement, anti-cracker movement. The major success came through when the students were involved in that. So we use the same concept for promoting rational use of medicine, antibiotics in general public.
Right, ma'am. And ma'am, one last question from my side, being a non-medical, like what does it mean as like antibiotic resistance? So what?
Antibiotic resistance does not mean that there's something wrong with the patient or there's something wrong with the drug. It is the bacteria which stops responding.
Fine, ma'am.
Many people think that there's wrong with the patient, no, or the drug is wrong. No, drug is the same, but bacteria, they found mechanisms to, they find mechanism to survive. This world is not only for us. Germs have been there before, even before we came in, and everyone has to survive. So they find mechanisms to survive these antibiotics as well, and that is what is called resistance.
Fine. And one question is coming from Sandeep. Any program is there for pharmacists who can help to educate the patients?
Sure. Our society, Delhi Society for Promotion of Rational Use of Drugs, DSPRUD, since 1996, we've been doing these programs for various categories of healthcare workers, doctors, nurses, pharmacists, and one of the important focus point is antibiotics. We are doing this already, maybe, but there is need to do more.
Fine. Thank you so much, ma'am. And we had few questions whether this session will be uploaded on YouTube. Yes, you'll be getting the link for this session, and it will be uploaded on our channel. I'll be handing over to Neha to conclude the session and give the vote of thanks to Dr. Sangeeta.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sharma. This has been a very useful session. And thank you everybody for attending our webinar. We'll keep you updated on other ones that are coming up. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Neha, Ravi, and Mayank for organizing this. This was an important topic, and relevance of this is even more in view of this current pandemic. I hope some of these interventions the participants find it useful, and they will do it in their own hospitals.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you everyone for.
Thanks, ma'am. Thanks, guys.